The question is that this House do now adjourn. Dan Carden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's an honour to follow the debate we've just had in this House on remembrance and the contribution of the armed forces, and to have joined the public in marking Remembrance Sunday at St George's Hall in Liverpool this weekend. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to lead this debate on blood transfusions during the Falklands War. The reason I've secured this debate is primarily to tell a story, a rather remarkable story on behalf of one of my constituents. A veteran of the Falklands War, it is the story of blood transfusions which saved a life, but, as he later discovered, came at a profound cost. My constituent, who prefers to remain anonymous, was a young man with 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment. And in 1982, his life was on the cusp of a new chapter. He was engaged to be married. But the outbreak of war put his future on hold. And in the early hours of the 12th of June, during the fierce overnight fighting for Mount Longdon, he was severely wounded. And after a 10-hour wait, evacuated to the hospital ship SS Uganda. I'd be pleased to give way.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend the Honourable Gentleman for Liverpool Walton for bringing this forward. I spoke to him beforehand. Does the Honourable Member not agree that the story of those British servicemen saved through donations from the ARA hospital ship is one of those times where honour in war was demonstrated? And does the Honourable Member not further agree that we must ensure that every man and woman trained to serve under our flag knows the obligation of duty and honour when they wear that noble uniform?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and absolutely I'm going to come on and develop further the points that he has made. But to return to the story of my constituent, after that 10-hour delay and his move to the hospital ship SS Uganda, he recalls waking from surgery to a nurse at his bedside who told him, and I quote from his own testimony, that he had been filled up with Argentine blood. At the time, he thought nothing of it. He was simply grateful to be alive, surrounded, as he was, by those who were more seriously injured, and knowing that many of his comrades were not so lucky. He accepted it, and he got on with his life. He eventually married in 1985, and he and his wife have just celebrated 40 years of marriage. However, the consequences of that life-saving transfusion emerged years later. In 1993, after donating blood, he was diagnosed with hepatitis B. His wife and children were required to undergo preventative vaccinations, and later he endured a brutal battle with kidney cancer, losing both kidneys and surviving 5 years on dialysis until a life-saving transplant in 2017. Throughout this, the question of the origin of his hepatitis B lingered. Reports about the infected blood scandal back here at home resonated deeply with my constituent. Yet he finds himself in a cruel paradox. The Ministry of Defence, the institution he served, has so far refused to even acknowledge the fact that he received Argentine blood, saying only that it does not hold any recorded information related to blood transfusions during the Falklands War. And so, determined to get to the truth, my constituent began to conduct research into the events surrounding his blood transfusion. I must say, the evidence he has gathered is astonishing. Records, telegrams, photographs and testimonies from all of the people involved. That evidence pieces together a timeline of events, which I wish to share with the House tonight. And first, we must understand the logistical reality aboard the SS Uganda prior to my constituent's injury. On the 28th of April 1982, the ship took aboard 360 units of blood from the Army Blood Supply Depot at Ascension Island. Records kept by the ship's crew, which my constituent has obtained, show that by the 10th of June, after expiries and transfers to other units, the SS Uganda was left with just 46 units of blood. On the 4th of June 1982, the senior medical officer of the SS Uganda, Surgeon Captain Andrew Rintoul, had met with the captain of the Argentine ship, the ARA Bahia Paraiso. Captain Rintoul's own written account confirms that the Argentines generously offered to supply Uganda if urgently needed in accordance with Geneva rules. That urgent need arrived just days later, when the SS Uganda received 160 new British casualties, mainly from the bombing of the RFA Sir Galahad on the 8th of June. The numbers speak for themselves. How could 46 units possibly treat so many severely wounded patients? Second, we have testimony from the medical professionals involved. From the British side, a senior nursing officer who served aboard the SS Uganda told my constituent that she was aware that some supplies came from the Argentine hospital ships. Another SS Uganda nurse recalls the unique encounter with the Bahia Paraiso, stating that blood was obtained from them for British patients. From the Argentine side, the evidence is even more direct. My constituent has contacted several doctors aboard the ARA Bahia Paraiso. The biochemical lieutenant, who stated that the Argentines did provide a considerable number of sachets of blood to the SS Uganda. He said, and I quote, "I swore the traditional and ancient Hippocratic oath. For that reason, both you and we treat the wounded regardless of which side they belong to." Another Argentine doctor who physically visited the SS Uganda via the Bahia Paraiso's Puma AE-506 helicopter was asked whether English patients received Argentine blood. His answer was simple and definitive. Yes, sir, they received Argentine blood. We brought it to them. My constituent also managed to contact the sergeant aboard the helicopter, who confirmed, and I quote, "On the June 10th, 1982, we transported 250 litres of blood from the hospital ship ARA Bahia Paraiso to hospital ship SS Uganda. We met several times to exchange wounded and medicines, a great example of military medical care in combat. In fact, the exchange was commended in Argentine media as part of the 40th anniversary of the war." My constituent has dozens of photographs showing the Puma AE-506 helicopter landing on the SS Uganda. British and Argentine doctors and crew members pictured together aboard the SS Uganda, and the SS Uganda plaque gifted to the ARA Bahia Paraiso in thanks. It is important to state clearly that my constituent holds no ill will towards the medical staff, British or Argentine, who saved his life. He is grateful. They acted under the extreme duress of war, making a humanitarian choice in the best interests of their patients. Yet this act of salvation also had lifelong consequences for him. And if it happened to him, it's likely that others among the hundreds of casualties treated after that date were similarly exposed. Should there not be an effort to identify and contact the veterans to ensure they too are aware? The exchange between the ARA Bahia Paraiso and SS Uganda is no secret. It is a documented historical event. The evidence provided by my constituent is overwhelming, credible, and drawn from multiple sources. And all he is asking is for the Ministry of Defence to acknowledge what the evidence so compellingly demonstrates. The refusal to do so is a heavy burden for him. It prevents him from achieving closure and from potentially seeking the specific recognition and support that may be available to him for a service-related illness. So I ask the Minister this evening, my ask to the Minister this evening is simple: for the truth to be officially recognised, and I urge the Minister to meet with my constituents and me to review the extensive dossier of evidence he has so painstakingly assembled over the years. Then, may we finally recognise what the historical record already shows, that he and others received Argentine blood transfusions on the SS Uganda. This is about according a veteran the simple dignity of truth. He served his country with great honour. He bore the physical and psychological wounds of that service, and the very least he deserves is for his country to look at the facts and acknowledge what happened. And I hope the Minister tonight can give him and this House a commitment to do just that. Thank you.
Minister, Louise Sanders-Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my honourable friend, the member for Liverpool Walton, for securing this important debate and for raising the case of his constituent. And it is indeed rather apt that we are holding this debate on Armistice Day, and so soon after Remembrance Sunday, when people the length and breadth of the UK have come together to commemorate the fallen. As a veteran myself, I would like to start my remarks this evening by thanking his constituent for his years of service to our country, and in particular his contribution to the Falklands War and to restoring sovereignty to the people of the Falklands, which came at a huge personal cost to his constituent. His courage and the courage and sacrifice demonstrated by all those who served in the Falklands War shall never be forgotten. I need to be clear at the outset that I'm limited in the extent to which I can go into your constituent's particular case, but I do hope that the information I have, and whilst it can never undo the harms caused by infected blood, will provide some measure of reassurance to his constituents that there is a clear route to compensation for members of our armed forces who received infected blood. Because the Infected Blood Inquiries report, which laid bare the details of the national infected blood scandal, explicitly set out that the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme includes provision for individuals who received infected blood during armed forces treatment overseas, which does include veterans of the Falklands War. As I say, no amount of money can undo the damage caused to people's lives. However, this government is determined that the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme will be there to bring redress to those who have been impacted. And it's important to note that the compensation scheme does not have hard cut-off dates for determining whether a person is eligible based on when their infection was acquired. All evidence will be assessed independently on the balance of probabilities. So therefore, whilst the scheme does acknowledge the introduction of screening for hepatitis B started in December 1972, before the start of the Falklands War, it does not preclude claims that demonstrate they fell outside of the screening programme. In terms of process, the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme is delivered by the Infected Blood Compensation Authority, which is the body responsible for handling claims and making payments. And the assessments that they make are based on the scheme's regulations, and it operates independently of the Ministry of Defence and other government departments. The authority began making payments to infected people in 2024, and last month it launched the registration service for those who wish to make a claim. So I would encourage his constituent and any other Falklands veterans who believe they may have been infected through blood transfusion to register with this service. I think it's also important that I address the issue of veterans' medical records and acknowledge that historical records from the early 1980s are not up to modern standards and are often incomplete. This should not discourage affected veterans from applying for the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme because, again, as I repeat, the Infected Blood Compensation Authority will consider all available evidence. Yes, of course.
As an officer of the APPG on infected blood, I would just like, in support of what the Minister is saying and the advice that she's giving, to confirm that the contact I've had with IPCA, the Compensation Authority, has been very positive, and they seem to want to engage very much on a personal basis with people who have suffered in this way, and he really should advise his constituent to take up this offer to engage with the authority, and I think he will be pleasantly surprised at the positive response he will get.
Minister. I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. In relation specifically to blood transfusions aboard SS Uganda during the Falklands War, the MOD has made extensive inquiries and concluded that it does not hold information in relation to these. And I wish to reiterate, I'm speaking here about MOD files rather than other forms of evidence, which I know, as he has said, exists. It also has concluded that any detailed information on the source of blood used is unlikely to have been recorded in medical records during this period. Whilst most of our veterans go on to live healthy and successful lives after leaving the armed forces... Yes.
I'm grateful to the Minister and to my honourable friend opposite for his guidance. I think the frustration my constituent has is the extensive research that he has done, the people he has spoken to, the evidence that he has been able to amass. And I think what he would really appreciate is if the Minister would commit to some time and energy from her department to be given to some of the evidence that he has acquired. Thank you.
I will just come on to that in a moment, so thank you for his intervention. I would just like to reiterate that the MOD Veterans Welfare Service supports veterans and their dependents with increasing needs around disability, housing and subsistence, and the War Pension Scheme is available for service-related injuries and conditions. When I served, I wanted to know that I would receive the best possible medical treatment for service-related conditions, and I expect the same for those that serve today. And I can reassure the House that the UK Defence Medical Services is now a global leader in operational blood management, providing world-class assurance and governance of blood products, including in deployed settings. The Centre of Defence Pathology monitors and evaluates the blood management system to ensure the safety of blood products in deployed settings, including recording full details of the transit, storage and use of every unit of blood. This level of tracking and governance was not in place during the Falklands War, but is now standard practice. I will just conclude by summarising the key points. Veterans of the Falklands War are eligible to claim compensation from the Infected Blood Compensation Scheme, and that there are no hard cut-off dates that would automatically exclude claims based on when an infection was acquired. Evidence will be independently assessed on the balance of probabilities, and incomplete medical records do not automatically disqualify a claim. And I would encourage his constituent and any other veterans in a similar position to register with the Infected Blood Compensation Authority's registration service. And I will say at this point, of course, I will meet with him and his constituent to talk about the work that he has undertaken and to hear his story. Because the sacrifices and service of Falklands veterans like his constituent will never be forgotten. This government is committed to supporting all our veterans because they have served our country with courage and dedication, and they deserve our support in return.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Order, order.